if you have been a fan of Interstellar since it was released in 2014 and you have been defending the film against critics or audiences that didn't like it, you know that the time to not be alone has come. Interstellar is a very special movie for me. I've seen it already 6 times in the theater since it was released in 2014 when it came out. I watched the film 2 times, and I had the opportunity to watch it 4 times since January 9th, which is why I'm releasing this video until now. It was released here in Panama, now apparently it's being released worldwide again. When it came out in 2014, the only people who have seen the film were my cousin and my mom. No one else of my social circle saw the film in 2014. And on the internet, everybody was like debating between if it was a good movie or a pretentious movie or didn't make sense, blah blah blah, that is known as worst and whatever. And I was one of those who was saying this film is amazing, it's my favorite movie of all time. When the credits rolled, I knew that it was my favorite movie of all time. But there was a time that I actually agreed with those complaints. And I was like, yeah, you know what? That's true. That's true. The film is not perfect, you know? But it didn't bother me. Still was my favorite movie of all time. And now 10 years later, seeing it with 5 of my friends, 2 of them have never seen the film, which was amazing to see their reactions. And seeing it in a packed audience, which is something that didn't happen in 2014. The theaters were kind of empty, honestly. Here it was packed. There was not a seat available. And I was just mesmerized. It's the best theater experience I ever had the first time I saw the film in its re-release. The best one. Easily. Not just because I was crowded with everyone, but because I watched my favorite film of all time in IMAX. And I was mind blown. And obviously when the credits rolled, everybody clapped. And I was like, I really don't feel alone anymore. So let's review the film. I'm a big Christopher Nolan fan, so I will know a lot of things about his films and comparing to Interstellar and stuff. One of them is actually the biggest difference, I will say, of Interstellar from his other movies are 2 things. One is pacing. I think his pacing in this film is very different from his films normally. His films have a quick, rapidly pace in editing. Here, it's a little bit more of contemplating stuff. That's Interstellar. But also, it's a mostly linear film. Like the first 45 minutes, the only thing that is not linear are the interviews that are from the people on the future. They are talking about the dust thing going on, and there's even more talking about it. But everything else is linear, and the plot doesn't kick in until 25 or 30 minutes into the film, which is very rare for a Nolan movie. Before we see Cooper's families and the farm and farm life and the daily life of the future on Earth. And it was very smart from Nolan to not put the year that the film is set in, because a lot of filmmakers do this, and a lot of filmmakers always, when the year comes around, that they say, oh, we will have flying cars in 2018, the filmmakers were like, I was wrong, So it was very smart to not place the year that the movie is set in. This is a very realistic future, and one that it feels very, very possible. And a lot of people, a lot of scientists, a lot of people who study agriculture, they'll tell you that this film actually speaks of its importance about farm life and about farmers. And so it's a very special future. The movie has an opening action sequence before its plot kicks in, and it's a cornfield chase that we have the first beautiful melodies of Hans Zimmer's score, which is the best score in cinema history. I don't give a shit. It is the truth. I'm seriously, it's the best score. I think it makes a lot of the film, honestly. At least 50% of the movie is because of Hans Zimmer. Maybe, I don't know. Something that struck me when I watched the film, the first time I watched the film in the re-release, was that it was the only time in the movie the whole Cooper family in an adventure, Cooper and his 2 sons, and that was kind of touching if you have seen the film already. The mystery of the room and the ghost was so fascinating. Yeah, the first time I saw the movie in 2014, I was like, isn't this movie about space? But it's so interesting and so intriguing. Nolan loves mystery, and Nolan loves the audience to actually analyze and try to predict whatever the hell is going on, how it connects to the main story. The NASA stuff is when the big Nolan exposition comes around. In Nolan movies that have a very complex plot, there's always like a 10-minute exposition sequence explaining you everything. And he's the best at doing this, and I really don't see another way to do it. This scene also has the line of the trailer.
Now you need to tell me what your plan is to save the world.
We're not meant to save the world. We're meant to leave it.
The goodbye scene of Cooper is heartbreaking. It's even more heartbreaking when you know what happens in the film. The first time I saw that, I was like, yeah, this is very sad. Very, very sad. But the second time I watched the film, I was like, oh my god, this is not gonna end so well as you might think. And there's something very genius about the sound of Interstellar. When it's about the sound choices, and when I mean about sound choices, I mean the choice where to put a sound or a music. The idea of Cooper living in the truck and the sound just kicks in, and the music with this wind sound as he's leaving his home, and the countdown of the launch from TARS as he's leaving is brilliant. It's the kind of stuff that other director will handle, and it will feel very like you're trying to be stylistic or something. But it connects so well to the emotion of this scene. And obviously Cooper lifting that blanket to see if Morph is there. Yeah. Then we get to the space stuff. I'm gonna be honest with you. When I watched the film for the first time in IMAX, I was like, this looks amazing. I've seen the movie hundreds of times. This is the best the movie has ever looked, from my point of view. But I was like, I was expecting a little bit more. I don't know what was I expecting, honestly. But the whole atmosphere scene, setting up everything, leaving with that as sound, just Michael Caine's do not go gentle into that goodnight speech, and the sound of Hans Zimmer's score was epic in cinema. But it was the wormhole sequence. That's when my jaw dropped. And I watched my other friends, and they also had their jaw dropped seeing the wormhole sequence, especially this shot. This shot in IMAX, it felt like the wormhole was in the theater. It was incredible. It's something that I will never forgive. And I can't believe that it was the 400th time or something that I was watching the movie, and it felt like I was watching it for the first time. Truly incredible. Really. And the special effects still look better than a lot of movies today. I don't know how they did it. A lot of it has to do, obviously, with the technique of docking the camera to the spaceships or the spacecraft, which is something that the next Star Wars movies, a lot of the next Star Wars movies, try to do too. If you see those films, at least there's one shot of a spacecraft with a docked camera. Nolan wasn't the first to do it, but he's the first big blockbuster director that everybody wanted to copy. But it's used a lot in this film, a lot, but it never feels overused. It feels necessary for the immersion. When you're in space, it feels like a documentary, but beyond a documentary. You're also going through a wormhole, a realistic wormhole. The design of the planets also feels very realistic, but also very creative, really cool. The film feels like a bunch of big sequences, and each sequence feels like its entire movie. And the whole Miller's Planet feels like an entire great movie that ends with obviously the devastating message scene. The landing, the way that Cooper lands that shit, the sound of the Ranger landing into a spiral sounds so incredible. And yeah, of course, the wave stuff that honestly was ruined from the trailers. I wish, no matter how great the trailers were, Interstellar, actually Interstellar has the best teaser trailer. I wish I just saw that teaser and not the other trailers, because the other trailers ruined for me the wave stuff. But it's all obviously like mind-blowing, and obviously like you feel the tension. My friends felt the tension. They never saw the trailers of the film, so they were mind blown, but they were also like, holy shit. So it was great to see their reaction. And the organ is powerful. Then we get to the message scene that there's even a meme about it, and it's heartbreaking, completely heartbreaking, of course, and it makes me cry. Everything about that scene is just like pandering to your heart. But if you think about it, it's a very creative scene. Like, it's just a genius could have come up with that scene, because how we are gonna play with the relativity theory to the motion of the story? Well, we see the character and we make him watch all of the years he lost with his kids. Just a genius and a brilliant mind like Christopher Nolan could come up with that scene. And then the other sequence is Dr. Man's planet. That I actually feel that it's even more exciting, not just because of what happens with Dr. Man, that it's a very interesting character, by the way. You hate him, but it's very interesting. It's because of Hans Zimmer's score. The Coward and Imperfect Luck and No Time for Caution, of course, tracks are the peak of cinema. But the whole sequence is obviously just thrilling. It's fucking thrilling. This sequence is about evil. The evil from Dr. Man and the evil from Cooper's son, Tom, back on Earth. Tom's character, by the way, is very interesting. Nobody talks about him. I think it's very heartbreaking what happens to him. And you don't get that angry at him. You are more sad about his situation, about his feelings, you know? Not as Dr. Man, that you really want that guy to fucking blow up, which is exactly what happens, of course. There's two explosions in Interstellar that I love. The explosion of Romilly's death, which is amazing, and the explosion, obviously, of Dr. Man. That made my friend jump in his seat. It was incredible. It was so funny. Yeah, of course, we have the No Time for Caution scene, the docking scene. I call it the docking scene, honestly. It's so inspiring. It's one of the most inspiring scenes I've ever seen in a movie. And the way that Hans Zimmer's score drops in the theater right after Cooper says docking, this is the greatest thing humanity has ever created. But I almost cry in this scene because, like I said, it was one of the most inspiring scenes I ever seen in a movie. In fact, it's the scene that has inspired me the most. It's a scene that is telling you nothing is impossible, you just have to do it. It's not possible, no, it's necessary. It's incredible, and it visually looks obviously amazing, but you're more immersed in the story than the visuals. The visuals are great, but it's the story that is making you care so much about that scene. And then we get into the black hole sequence, which, by the way, Tarzan Case, amazing robots, incredible characters. Everybody has said everything that has to be said about those characters. I don't have to say anything else. I think they're incredibly funny, and genius writing from Nolan, and genius idea of having robots that are just your friends, you know. Really cool, really cool. The black hole sequence is important and great. The score, it's also once again loud, but it feels so like, oh my god, you know, like Cooper is about to sacrifice 90%. It's really heartfelt. The Tesseract stuff, obviously, when Cooper lands in that thing, I was like, what the hell is going on? And then we see some books, and I remember the first thing that I thought about was, is he in a library? He was, yeah. He's in a library, holy shit. And then I was like, oh, of course he's in the room, of course. But then let's talk about the complaints of Interstellar now. There are two main complaints about the movie. One is the dialogue. A lot of people complain about the exposition, that it feels very fake. A lot of people complain about, I don't know, a lot of messages being spoken by the characters and stuff, you know. All of those things that I at one time agreed with people, I don't agree with you anymore. I think the dialogue might be the most realistic dialogue in a Nolan movie. I'm being honest with you. And I think it feels very organic, the way that the actors deliver it and everything, you know. And yeah, there are scenes that the characters are speaking the themes of something. And there's obviously scenes that people say that feels very fake, that it feels like Nolan is actually speaking to the audience and no Romilly to Cooper. One of those scenes is obviously the explanation of the wormhole. And it's the kind of criticism that I hate, because somebody said it and then somebody else copied of that. The complaint is that it doesn't make sense that a scientist, Romilly, will explain an engineer, Cooper, why a wormhole looks like a sphere. One of my friends who watched the film with me in the theater, who have never seen the film at that time, was like surprised by how the wormhole looks. But at the same time, he also said, "Oh, that makes sense." And he's an engineer. The fact that you're an engineer doesn't guarantee that you know exactly how a wormhole looks. Even the film explains that Cooper says. I have seen just the illustrations, you know. Cooper knows how a wormhole works, but how it looks, like, that's something that also surprises him. Again, it's the kind of thing that people just repeat after someone said it.
The other complaint is that the film feels very realistic until the Tesseract sequence, where crazy things are happening and Amelia's statement about love is affirmed by Cooper, that the film breaks the realistic tone set from the beginning.
The movie opens with a girl saying that there's a ghost in her room, and the books are falling from the shelf alone, and they're giving coordinates to the main character. The gravity's giving coordinates to the main character. And that happens in the first 10 minutes of the film. That's everything I have to say about the tone. Now, the love stuff. I know that some people don't like the speech of Anne Hathaway's character. Again, it's a scene that a lot of people say that she's delivering the message of the film right to the audience, and that it doesn't make sense. She believes that Edmund's planet is the planet that they have to go. Is the right planet. Is the planet that can sustain human life. And she is kind of confronting Cooper because Cooper is like, Dr. Mind's the best of us, and he's sending us an ambiguous message that we have to come to his planet. Amelia says in a previous scene, her father didn't want anyone to have personal attachments, anyone from the Lazarus mission. And so it means that Miller and Mann don't have any personal attachments. Edmunds has a personal attachment, that's Amelia, but that's kind of a secret. He loves Amelia. He knows Amelia will come in the next mission, in the Endurance mission, which means that if he pushes that button and his planet is not the right one, Amelia might be in danger. Which is why if he doesn't have a 100% guarantee that his planet is the right one, he wouldn't push that button. Which is exactly what happens. He has that guarantee and he's like, okay, I'm gonna push this button because I know that when she comes, she's gonna be safe. That's the way I think about it. And of course the Morph and Cooper stuff, their connection is explained in the big Tesseract moment. That's the explanation that I have. I really do think that the film makes sense for me, and I think it's pretty logical in its message. But the big twist in the Tesseract scene, which is an amazing scene, it's an emotional, satisfying scene, and it looks amazing. It's in a real set with some CGI elements. The twist of this scene is not Cooper being the ghost. For myself, I knew it. Everybody knew it. The big surprise is that there are not beings. The guys who created the Tesseract or the wormhole, all that stuff, they are us from the future. That impacted me when I was watching the movie for the first time. I was like, damn. Like, it gave me hope. I don't know. It felt so focused in the story, and I was like, this is so beautiful. Like, it's emotionally satisfying with the themes of the movie, the themes that the movie is talking about humanity and caring about the others. The last 10 minutes of the film in Cooper Station is another scene that a lot of people have complained about. Even one of my friends who have seen the film a lot of times says that it's completely unnecessary. Without the ending, that ending that we got from the movie, that's the film for me. I love it. I really love it. Of course, the baseball shot, it's brilliant. But Cooper reuniting with Murph, Cooper asking, how did you know I would come back? And she responding, because my dad promised me. It breaks me every time I see the film. But there's something about the film that for some reason I didn't get all of these years until now. And it's that Cooper fulfilled his dreams at the end of this movie. He goes and flying into space and in his own adventure. And Anne Hathaway's visuals of her in Edmund's planet with under our new sun in our new home, the whole heart of the movie just wraps up in those last 10 minutes. Interstellar, of course, is a special movie for me because it's my favorite movie, but the first time I saw it and the first time I watched the film in the re-release, it felt like a religious experience. It has felt like a religious experience every time I see it. It feels so spiritual. That's a word that a friend used. It felt spiritual. It feels like something so big, so important, so personal is going on in the movie. And the movie came out in a moment in my life that it was very difficult. I was 14, and you know, when you're 14, you're thinking crazy stuff and stuff that is very depressing. And the movie gave me hope. And I think I'm not the only one who has felt the same. You know, so thank you to Christopher Nolan, Jonathan Nolan, Matthew McConaughey, everyone who collaborated in this film, because I think it is one of the best films ever made. Might be the best film ever made, but it's certainly my favorite movie of all time, and I think it will remain like that until I die. Maybe not, but I really do think it will be always my favorite movie of all time. And thank you guys for watching this video. I will make more videos in the future talking about interesting stuff of situations that are going on in the film industry that I think you will be very interested by. So I'll see you next time. Bye.